What a Saturday at the Chinese Grand Prix. We had a chaotic sprint race won by George Russell, a recovery drive from Lewis Hamilton, and then a historic moment in qualifying as Andrea Kimi Antonelli became the youngest pole sitter in Formula One history. Today, we're going to break down what happened in the sprint, how Antonelli grabbed that incredible pole, and what it really tells us about Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, and Red Bull heading into Sunday. Before we get into it, if you want clear, no-nonsense coverage of every F1 weekend, make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our Chinese GP race debrief.
Let's start with the sprint race, because that 19-lap dash was a proper fight at the front. George Russell started from the front, but just like in Melbourne, he immediately came under attack from a Ferrari. This time it wasn't Charles Leclerc, it was Lewis Hamilton, in a car he actually feels comfortable in again. Hamilton launched a really aggressive opening lap, diving down the inside of Russell at turn 9 to take the lead and briefly look on course for a second consecutive sprint win in China. Russell, though, wasn't backing down. He used his battery deployment and sent it into turn 14, trading the lead back and forth with Hamilton over the first few laps. Twice, Hamilton was able to retake the position, using the run into turn 1 to undo Russell's move at the end of the lap. But on lap 5, Russell finally made it stick at turn 14, and this time he held the inside of turn 1 on the following lap. From there, Hamilton's race began to unravel. His front left tyre started to grain badly, the Ferrari's pace dropped off, and that opened the door for Charles Leclerc to move up into second place. Behind them, there was more drama. Kimi Antonelli, who'd started on the front row, had a terrible launch, dropped all the way to 8th, and then picked up a 10-second penalty for contact with Isaac Hadjar's Red Bull. Even with that penalty, he fought his way back into the mix, served the 10 seconds in the pits, and still managed to recover to 5th at the flag, helped by Oscar Piastri having to give the position back after passing Antonelli before the start-finish line on the restart. We also had a safety car on lap 13 when Nico Hülkenberg stopped at turn 1. The top 6, Russell, Leclerc, Hamilton, Norris, Antonelli, Piastri, all dived into the pits, which set up a short sprint to the end. Leclerc had a chance to attack Russell on the restart, but a slide out of turn 14 effectively handed the win to Mercedes. Final result at the front, Russell P1, Leclerc P2, Hamilton P3, Norris P4, Antonelli P5, Piastri P6. Further back, Liam Lawson and Oliver Bearman tried the opposite strategy, staying out on hard tyres and grabbing track position. It worked well enough for P7 and P8, just ahead of Max Verstappen, who had a shocker of a start, dropped to the back and only just missed out on points in P9. So on pure numbers, it's a Mercedes win, Ferrari right there in the fight, McLaren collecting decent points, and Red Bull nowhere near the sharp end in a 19-lap race.
If the sprint showed Mercedes on top in race trim, qualifying confirmed just how strong the W17 really is. Andrea Kimi Antonelli delivered the lap of his life. In Q3, he opened with a 132.322, then improved to a 132.064, putting a huge marker down for everyone else to chase. Meanwhile, things got nervy on the other side of the garage. George Russell's car stopped on track in Q3 with a powertrain issue. He got it going again, but couldn't change gear properly and had to limp back to the pits. At that point, it looked like Antonelli was the clear favourite for pole position, but he still had to sit in the garage and watch the timing screens while Russell went for one last lap. Lewis Hamilton was the first to get close, within within 0.315 of Antonelli's time, but it wasn't enough. Then came Russell's final attempt. He put everything together. The car finally behaved, and he went purple in sectors that made Mercedes's pit wall nervous for a moment. In the end, he fell 0.222 seconds short, which locked in Antonelli on pole, Russell P2, a front-row lockout for Mercedes, and Kimi Antonelli as the youngest pole sitter in the history of Formula One, at just 19 years old. Behind them, Ferrari lined up on row 2, Hamilton P3, Leclerc P4. McLaren took row 3 with Oscar Piastri P5, barely ahead of Norris Larden in P6. Then we had Pierre Gasly splitting the Red Bulls in P7 with Max Verstappen P8 and Isaac Hadjar P9, just ahead of Oliver Behrman in P10. For Red Bull, it was a bit of a nightmare. Verstappen was almost a full second off pole, and the RB22 just looked completely out of sorts, both in balance and in consistency. Antonelli, on the other hand, did exactly what you expect from a future superstar, took advantage of a small issue on Russell's side of the garage, and converted his opportunity into a statement pole.
Let's talk big picture, because Saturday gave us a lot of clues. First, Mercedes are clearly the reference package right now. The W17 isn't just about energy deployment, it's strong on the brakes, stable on corner entry, and extremely good over one lap. But the gap is not impossible to close. Ferrari are not miles away. They had the outright pace to attack Russell in the sprint, and they've got two genuine weapons now, Leclerc in his prime and Hamilton looking far more comfortable than he did in his final Mercedes seasons. Mercedes also showed they're not bulletproof. Russell's Q3 powertrain scare is exactly the kind of issue that can throw away a championship if it happens on a Sunday. Second, McLaren looks like it might be starting its remontada. After a pretty sobering Melbourne, China has been much more encouraging. The car is clearly the third force here. The gap to Mercedes and Ferrari doesn't look dramatic, and both Piastri and Norris are in the mix, not clinging to the back of the top 10. Given McLaren's recent upgrade history, you'd be brave to bet against them getting closer as the season goes on. Third, the rookie class is real. Oliver Behrman keeps quietly delivering, points in the sprint, another Q3 in qualifying, comfortably ahead of Esteban Ocon. And Antonelli, there's not much more to say. Top 5 in the sprint, even with a 10-second penalty and a bad start, then pole position the same afternoon. That's elite. Fourth, Red Bull's problems go way beyond the power unit project. Yes, the Red Bull-Ford powertrain story is huge in itself, but this weekend in China has exposed deeper issues with the RB22 chassis and balance. We've seen Verstappen make uncharacteristic mistakes, we've seen the car bouncing around in both sprint and quali trim, and we've seen them almost a second away from pole. Isaac Hadjar being right there with Max is the one bright spot, but in terms of pure performance, Red Bull are a long way from the dominant standards of the last few years. In the midfield, it's more about survival than glory at the moment. Aston Martin are basically using the sprint format to at least see some checkered flags while they ride out the early pain of their Honda partnership. They were slightly more respectable in the 19-lap race, but still nowhere near threatening the top of the midfield. In qualifying, the only reason their gap didn't look tragic was Williams struggling even more. Fernando Alonso was still about 1.6 seconds away from the best midfield car. For Aston, the main objective right now is just getting the car to Sunday without running out of spare parts.
Cadillac, meanwhile, are getting a reality check after their honeymoon finish in Australia. Reliability issues that Sergio Perez flagged as early as Barcelona are still there in the background, but Valtteri Bottas at least managed to mix it with the Astons in qualifying, which is a small sign that there is some pace to be unlocked in that package. It's not pretty, but for both Aston and Cadillac, Saturday in Shanghai was at least a step forward in terms of mileage and data. So, to sum it up, Russell wins the sprint after a proper fight with Hamilton and Leclerc. Antonelli becomes the youngest pole sitter in F1 history, leading a Mercedes front row lockout. Ferrari are close enough to keep this interesting, McLaren look much healthier, and Red Bull have real work to do. We're set up for a fascinating Chinese Grand Prix on Sunday. If you want the full race debrief with data, strategy breakdowns, and driver ratings, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Drop a like if this helped you understand the day, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our post-race analysis. Let me know in the comments, who is your favorite to win the race now? Russell, Antonelli, Hamilton, or someone coming from further back? We'll be back right after the checkered flag with our full Chinese GP review. See you then!